Joe Cunningham served the constituents of the 1st Congressional District for 2 years in Washington as their congressman. Tomorrow, he says goodbye and passes the torch to Nancy Mace, who will take over for the next 2 years. Today, I talk one-on-one with the congressman for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. United States Congressman Joe Cunningham, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Glad to be here, Quintin. Thanks again for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Too long, man.
Too long. I know the last interview I did with you was on Zoom.
Yeah.
But my MacBook crashed at 1 o'clock this afternoon. It's 2 o'clock now, so we had to configure it, and obviously I had to go and grab my video camera.
we improvise here, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
I went back to your Twitter bio on Twitter. It says this: Congressman for South Carolina 1st Congressional District. Dad, husband, problem solver, fan of local craft beer and bipartisanship. What problems are you solving right now, Congressman? Just 1 day left in office.
Well, this will be my last day. New Congress gets sworn in tomorrow. It's just been, quite frankly, the honor of my lifetime to be able to serve in this capacity for the last 2 years. And I'm very proud of all the work we've gotten done. And last few weeks we've been focused on getting the stimulus package through, which President Trump signed into law. We also we're overriding him on the NDAA, the military budget, and all these things were happening as of just last week. And so, on top of all that, we're in the transition phase of closing down the offices and making this handover as seamless as possible to Representative-elect Mace.
Let me back up a little bit. Obviously, you just talked about the stimulus, and everyone's talking about it right now. And when I interviewed Representative-elect Mace the other day, she said, "Hey, it should go to targeted audience." But let me ask you this, Congressman: what are you in favor for, 600 or the 2,000?
2,000. Yeah, 2,000. I mean, look, we're in one of the worst, public health and economic crisis of our lifetime. And we're just getting through the holiday season, and our office has received call after call and email after email from low-country families and businesses that are suffering, and they need help. And the $600 check, it just ain't going to cut it. And so when that's why I was excited to hear that President Trump supported an increase of 2,000. I wish that came weeks before. We could have already had that negotiated and probably had a little bit more help from the Senate. But I was glad that we were able to get some more PPP loans to the small businesses. Protect people from being evicted from their homes during the holiday season. There's a lot of great things in that stimulus package that I think will make a significant improvement in people's lives. But I do think that 2,000 will be a hell of a lot more helpful than the $600.
If you were to get that help from the Senate, would you be in favor of just taking it down a notch to maybe 1,200 instead of 2,000?
Look, I mean, I think whatever way we can do to increase that from 600 to as close to 2,000 as possible. Now, I won't ever say no. It's 2,000 or nothing, and be opposed to an increase further from 600 to somewhere in between. But that's just part of negotiations. I think what we're seeing right now from Senator McConnell is obstruction. It's the same thing that I've witnessed, quite frankly, the last 2 years. It's been frustrating to have so many good bills of ours, bipartisan bills, that pass the House and they go there to just die in the Senate. But that seems to be Mitch McConnell's MO the last several years.
What should have been his MO when it comes to the stimulus package?
Should have been increasing it from, we passed a piece of legislation that the Cash Act, which increased it from $600 to 2,000, and President Trump indicated that he would sign that into law, and Senator McConnell needs to bring that to the fore for an up or down vote, and let people make it known to the American people where they stand on the increase in stimulus checks. So I'm glad we're able to get the stimulus package through. Look, I think it should have been done months and months ago, but that's just the kind of gridlock that unfortunately I witnessed up in Washington, D.C., and it's all driven by this rabid partisanship. The folks who will just obstruct anything because they don't want it to seem like the other side is getting a win. And I think that this is it's that's an incredible challenge that our country is facing right now, is how you bring people together, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, so you can actually effectively tackle the problems at hand.
Let me go to your farewell speech, because I was sitting at work at the restaurant and watching it that day, and let me pick a part of it.
Sure.
You said this quote: "By most accounts, I should never have been here in the first place." Let me ask you a blunt question: how did you get to Congress in the first place?
Well, in 2018, we had a strong message of bipartisanship and reaching across the aisle, working together, and it's something we stayed true to as well. And when you look at logistically, look, South Carolina's districts are gerrymandered, and you have politicians who are drawing lines to pick voters as opposed to, allowing voters to pick their politicians. You know what district we're in right now? We're in my district right now. You know what happens when you walk across the street?
Right.
You walk into Jim Clyburn's district.
Yeah.
And so the 1st Congressional District has 5 parts of 5 different counties.
Wow.
And it's gerrymandered, and the reason it's drawn like that is to ensure a Republican stronghold. That's it. And what we're seeing up in Washington, D.C., the partisanship, the gridlock, I believe is a result of gerrymandering, because what happens when you draw these district boundaries to ensure, and to be clear, Democrats and Republicans both do it, and it's wrong in all circumstances. But when you have a district that's drawn specifically for a Republican, and they don't have to worry about reaching across the aisle or appeasing Democrats or working together, then they have no reason to. And in fact, oftentimes it may be viewed as a liability in a primary challenge. So they're disincentivized from reaching across the aisle, from working together. And so you get up to Washington, D.C., you have the extremes of both sides who are representing districts, and there's such a large gap to bridge. And when you distill it down, it's a reason why there's so much gridlock and not as much gets done up there as it should.
How do you close that gerrymandering gap?
It's done on the state level. Certain states have had independent redistricting commissions, which is something that was part of H.R. 1, which is a bill that we passed in the House this session. But South Carolina needs an independent redistricting commission. Computers can do it for you if you tell them to essentially draw it to make it as balanced, or follow the county lines to the best of their ability. There's different ways you can do it, but that's not what's being done right now. And what's being done is, like I said, drawing the districts to have 1 strong Democratic seat, which is Clyburn, and then 6 strong Republican seats. So 1 versus 6, as opposed to what it should be, probably 3 versus 4, considering the makeup of South Carolina.
When can South Carolina expect to get those 3 or 4 Democratic seats for you all, the Democrats?
Well, I think the new district boundaries are going to be drawn in the springtime here coming up. So I think it's important that we watch who's doing that, how they're doing it, making sure that it's done in broad daylight and not in a behind closed doors in a dark corner or something. It's got to be done with public input, and again, guided not by partisanship, but by what's fair and equitable, so that every person's voice and vote can matter and be heard. Because oftentimes, a lot of voters are disincentivized from going out and casting their vote because they just feel like it doesn't matter, because the seats already been drawn to favor a particular party.
How will the voters of the 1st Congressional District, obviously in their voices, matter in the next 2 years?
How will their voices matter and be heard? Well, again, as we start redrawing district boundaries in the springtime, I think it's important that the media, you all, provide some coverage on how that process is unfolding, so that people understand the impact, because these are district boundaries going to be drawn for the next 10 years, and it's going to be impacting. I can't tell you how many folks would call me or text me on election day saying, "Hey, I went to vote for you, but you're not on the ballot," not realizing that they're a street over or something like that. But look, we got a lot of big challenges, and especially in the midst of this pandemic. It's important that everybody continue to participate in our democracy, because it's not a spectator sport, and you have to allow your voice to be heard.
What is the state of democracy as you know it?
Well, I mean, we're looking at some Republicans that I've served with and then at least one or two on the Senate that are protesting Biden's victory. And when you propel these conspiracy theories and you challenge the results of the election. Look, I lost my election, but I don't think it was rigged. I don't think that I don't broker in these conspiracy theories. But when you do that, when you elevate these things, as some of my colleagues are, it takes it fractures the trust that Americans have in our democracy and in our voting system. And when you get right down to it, that's the core, that's the bedrock. Our country prides ourselves. Our founding fathers made it, the cornerstone for fair and free elections. And when President Trump attacks that process and says without any evidence that it was rigged and it was stolen, it just does a lot of harm to our democracy. And I think that those members, those senators who are backing him on on these unfounded conspiracy theories, I hope that history, records their name in the right light, and that they're remembered for their behavior right now and challenging this and basically putting a stain on our democracy.
How should your name go down in the right light when it comes to the book of Congress?
Yeah. Well, I think we're very proud of everything that we've gotten done in the last 2 years. It's proud to be ranked one of the most bipartisan members in Congress. This is something that I said I would do, and I did, and I'm proud to show that it yielded results. We had multiple bills of mine being signed into law by President Trump. The Great American Outdoors Act, which was one of the biggest pieces of environmental legislation in my lifetime. Our lifetime. I think we're about the same age. And
you're older. I'm like 30.
All right. I got to age a few more years too in this last session of Congress. We're just I'm extremely proud. Our caseworkers here in the district. In 2019, we closed more cases than any other freshman member of Congress. And I'm just extremely proud of the folks in our office and how hard they've worked. And I think that those things are going to be remembered.
I got to go back because you just said that you're obviously the fourth ranked bipartisan member in Congress. But how did you get voted out if you're bipartisan? Well,
elections can be, can take on a, when you have a presidential election and when you have, cycles that may differ from cycle to cycle. You can try to do everything right, and you can think you did everything right, but at the end of the day, sometimes things don't break your way, and that doesn't take anything away from the fact that we're proud of everything we've gotten done. And we talked earlier about this. Right. This is a gerrymandered district. I never should have been here in the first place, by all accounts, based upon the district that President Trump won by 13 points. Right. I mean, Mark Sanford won by like 22 points or something. No Democrat had ever had it in about 40 years. And to think that we even got here in the first place, and then we came within 1 point of winning it the second time, I think is a testament to actually how strong that message is, and how much people are craving bipartisanship and folks working together. We're in this election, we were running in a gerrymandered district. President Trump at the top of the ticket. We have straight ticket voting in South Carolina, which I think does a major disservice to our democracy as well. So you have certain things running against you, but again, we ran an honest campaign on the issues and on our record, and just didn't break our way this time.
Did voting against the minimum wage damage your campaign?
I don't think so. I think you're referring to the $15 an hour minimum wage, and we've been very vocal from the beginning that the minimum wage does need to increase, and $7.25 is just atrocious. And so in South Carolina, it needs to come up. And I was in favor of bringing it up to double digits, 10, 11, 12 bucks an hour. There's a breaking point, or I guess an inflection point, in raising it to 15, though, as it relates to small businesses, restaurants. And so I reached out to restaurant owners, small business owners, who told me that they would have to lay off people or cut their shifts or raise menu prices or all of the above if it went to 15. And again, I think it does need to increase, but I think it needs to be done in a way that's sensitive to these small businesses and making sure that we don't ultimately end up hurting the employees, as opposed to helping them. And so, I'm proud of everything we've done these last 2 years, and I don't think that really played much of a part, though.
How did that, obviously what you just mentioned to me, how did that get lost in translation with your constituents and all your supporters?
Well, I'm not sure it was lost. We put out statements, we put out press releases, videos. They explain kind of the reasoning. And, look, when you're representing a district that is dynamic as this one, you're not going to make everybody happy all the time. And I've told people from the get-go, like, I'm going to take votes that you may not like, but I'm always going to tell you where I stand and why I stand there. And so we may disagree as to an actual vote from time to time, but you'll always know that I'm approaching it from a objective and bipartisan standpoint. And those are the consequences of being one of the most independent members in Congress, is that you're not going to be beholden to a particular party, but you're going to do what's right for the district and what's right for the people. And I don't think that this played much of a part, if any, in this conversation in the election.
Essentially being independent, did that really hurt you in the end, Congressman?
I don't think so. I mean, look, I think running in a presidential election year in a gerrymandered district with straight ticket voting presents a unique set of challenges that are tough to overcome. And you look at how President-elect Biden did in this district, and compare our results, and he lost by, I think, 6 points in this district, and we lost by 1 point. So we ran ahead of him. So I'm proud of all the crossover support we had, all the Republicans who endorsed our campaign. And I think that most people in this country are somewhere near in the middle. They may be to a little bit left on social issues, or maybe to a little bit to the right on financial issues, or budget issues. But unfortunately, what you see in Washington, D.C. is it's being governed by the extremes on both ends. And again, I hate to go back to gerrymandering, but that's a result of gerrymandering. And we're always in the middle, and again, letting people know why we were voting a certain way, and always open to receiving new information and more information. But I'm very, very happy with the results that have been yielded through working together and being bipartisan.
What new information did you and your team receive when it comes to certain issues in the district?
Well, things come up all the time where folks, and we've had a great stream of communication with our constituents, that they're able to contact us by email, by phone. Before COVID, we were doing town halls, and then we went to virtual town halls. And so I think people in the district always felt the ability to reach out and connect directly with us, and allow their voices to be heard, and their information, and it's helpful, because when you have a piece of legislation come down the pipeline and you hear from constituents back home that says this is going to impact me because of X, Y, and Z, that's more information, that's new information that we need to process and take that into account before we ring the card and press the vote button on the floor of Congress. So it happens with every vote, happens with every single issue, and we're just happy to have those lines of communication open so people can do that. And
let me go back to your farewell speech. Obviously, you said this quote: "Sadly, though, here in Washington, D.C., bipartisanship and civility seem to be the exception and not the rule. In my short tenure, I have been disappointed with a lot I have encountered. I have seen members consistently put their party ahead of their own people, embracing conspiracy theories or arguments detached from reality while knowing better, and admittedly so privately. I've seen members mock the president behind his back and praise him to his face, loathe him in private and worship him on television. I've seen them intentionally spread misinformation and lies, flirt with the white supremacists, and pander to the most extreme voices in our society. And it's been one of the reasons, and one reason alone, self-preservation. I have seen members consistently put their party ahead of their people. Let me break that down. Did you put party over low country on certain issues?
No, let's put people over politics and low country over party. And, we got a record that proves that. We took a lot of hard votes, and that votes that upset people on the left, votes that upset people on the right. But time and time again, I said that I would always vote my conscience and vote the district and vote what I thought was best for my constituents, and be honest with people about it. But that's more the exception, not the rule up in Washington, D.C. Because I work with a lot of people who tell you that President Trump polls so much more favorable in their district than they do, and that if they start going after him or going against him or disagreeing with him, it hurts them politically. And oftentimes that's their North Star, that's their guiding light, is what do I need to do in order to come back next election. And so I think that's a big problem in Washington, D.C. is folks are always putting ahead like what they have to do in order to win an election, as opposed to what you have to do to win for the people.
And speaking of which, you said this quote: people more interested in protecting themselves and their party than protecting our country, more interested in keeping their job than doing their job. Such reckless and selfish behavior has created a system where most politicians can't lose and most Americans can't win. How can Americans win despite that system?
Well, you have to change the rules. You have to change how the districts are drawn. You have to put an end to gerrymandering. You need to, instead of trying to restrict people from accessing the voting booth, you need to figure out ways to make it more accessible. And in a state like South Carolina, we've fallen behind on a lot of these issues, and so when you get right down to it, you have to look at the rules of this and how we can change them so that everyone is able to participate and everyone's voice can be heard and everyone's vote is counted. But quite frankly, right now we have a system where a lot of people feel disenfranchised, and rightfully so.
And you also said this too, quote, that the other side is not the enemy. The enemy is stubbornness of our own biasness. The enemy is a political system that seeks to divide us for the sport, as you mentioned earlier. But what were your political biases in Congress?
Well, I'm not sure those come to mind. We always try to do the right thing and what's right for the district, and what we thought, not guided by a particular party or a particular leader. It's just at the end of the day making independent decisions on what's right for folks in the 1st Congressional District. And again, I think we got a track record that exemplifies that. But each person goes up to Washington, D.C. in any job too, Quintin, like, with your own set of biases per se, with that are from your own personal experiences, from either growing up or from working in a particular field. And so, but the biases that I was talking about in that speech, that the ones that are the most hurtful and harmful are those ones where people are making decisions, saying things, or taking votes based only on self-preservation, only to be able to come back and win another election, as opposed to doing what's right for the country or what's right for their constituents. Because there's a lot of harm that's been done to our democracy by this president and by the conspiracy theories that he espouses. And those people who are either amplifying it or not standing up to it, I think, like I said, I think that they'll be judged, in the history books for that.
Were there any harm done by the Democrats?
Yeah, look, there's blame on both sides when it relates to partisanship, and we talked earlier about gerrymandering. Both sides do it, and so there's always going to be for a lot of these issues we have, plenty of blame on both sides. But right now, what we're seeing with this president and attacking the integrity of our election systems, that's solely being done by him and those people who are supporting him wholeheartedly. So I think you have a responsibility to call those things out, and you can work with. Like I said, I made a lot of great friendships on both sides of the aisle up there, but we can have those friendships and relationships, but also have spirited debates on either the issues or things such as this. And this is something that I'm not just going to be muzzled or silent about, because I want, at the end of the day, when things shake down, folks to know exactly where I stand on this issue.
Speaking of issues, you said this on Twitter just recently, quote, "Today I was proud to support the MORE Act and decriminalize marijuana at the federal level." What do you want to support? Where do you want support at from the state level?
Look, I think actually we're next to we're close to the Veterans Affairs Hospital,
right?
And I remember multiple meetings where veterans, are struggling with PTSD or pain, and they want medical marijuana and not able to get it here in South Carolina. Instead, they get shoved with opioids, OxyContin, painkillers, only to be hooked on those and addicted to those. I think we need to, like I said, open up the access for them and what they can have, because I think it's showing that there's a lot of benefit from that on the recreational side. That you also on the medical side. On the recreational side, we've seen states that have produced additional streams of income for states. And look, right now during COVID, during this pandemic, where local, county, and city and state budgets are gutted by this, we've got to be start getting creative on how we produce more dollars, on how to better the services, better our education system, our healthcare system. We've got a lot of problems here in South Carolina, and it's important that we make sure we use every single tool at our disposal in order to tackle it.
Well, let me ask you this. Will the state profits be paid to the men and women, disproportionately blacks, who lost decades of their life because of the hashtag war on drugs?
What's the question?
Will state profits be paid to the men and women, disproportionately African Americans, who lost decades of their life because of the war on drugs?
I'm not sure, exactly that you're talking about the money from.
Right.
I think certain states dictate how those funds are going to be collected and how they're going to be dispersed.
Okay.
Certain states will take those and put them in to education, increase in teacher salaries. Some of them will put it towards other state-run programs. And I think it's each state's different. Each
Right.
state has their own set of unique challenges. South Carolina, unfortunately, we're at the bottom of every single list that we want to be at the top of, and at the top of every list we want to be at the bottom of. So when it comes to ways in which that revenue can be utilized, I don't think there's going to be a shortage of opportunities.
Eliminating food deserts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can do a lot of great things with some of this additional revenue that's coming in. But our healthcare in South Carolina, our education system, those are the two larger ones that come to mind.
And let me get back, obviously, to the stimulus as your mask is falling away. Sorry about that, because of this win. But will college students over the age of 18 who are still dependents receive that $600?
Well, I think we've tweaked the language in there because in the first round it was just 18 years of age, and now we're looking at dependents that that may or may not live with their parents and may still be going to college.
Right.
So it'd probably be on a more case-by-case basis, and we want to correct that language from before, because there's a lot of people who are dependents and maybe over the age of 18 but are still living at home, and sometimes they may require that because of mental or physical handicaps. So we want to make sure to broaden that so that more people can have access to it.
And let me get back, obviously, to your farewell speech. You said this, quote, "I have been trying to work with people since the first day I got here. I won't ever stop reaching across the aisle or trying to work with one another or sitting down and having a beer and listening to each other." How do you hope to reach across the aisle to Nancy Mace and listen to her while drinking a beer?
Well, I called Representative-elect Mace up to congratulate her on her victory a few days after the election, after all the votes were counted.
Right.
And our office has been trying to help her make this transition as seamless as possible. I was happy to see that she kept on some of my staff and caseworkers
Right.
who've done an exceptional job And told her that here to help in any way possible, whatever you need. She's now my representative as of tomorrow.
Right.
And so I think her success would be a success for the Low Country and the constituents. And so we're wishing her all the best. Keeping on those caseworkers, I think it's a good start.
Good start. Did you ever consider asking for a hand recount of your election?
No. I think there's an automatic recount if it's within 1%, I believe. There are some votes out, I think, in Dorchester County,
right,
about 10,000 that we were waiting to get counted. And so that's what took a few days before we ultimately conceded. But oftentimes those hand recounts may not change the number. I've got a friend of mine, Anthony Medici, up in New York, and he's like, I haven't followed what the current status is right now, but he was going back and forth by being up 6 votes, down 10. I mean, that's how close it was. Again, you got to be within a very, very small margin like that before I think a hand recount would probably help out or change the outcome.
2022.
2022.
Are you going to run for governor of South Carolina?
I got to figure out, what's next for me. As of tomorrow, I'll be a private citizen again,
right,
and look forward to spending more time here in Charleston and with my family. And I'm just focused on kind of making that transition. And look, Quinn, I'll tell you, I don't think I'm done serving the people of South Carolina. I'll be, this election hasn't broken my spirit of public service, and I think that what we've accomplished the last 2 years is a very worthy endeavor. And even though the results at the election box wasn't what we had hoped it to be, it doesn't mean that we fell short in producing results, legislative results. And so I don't know what that's going to look like, but as far as what's in store for my future and how I'm going to continue to serve, but I look forward to championing and advocating for some of the same issues that I've been working on, either as a private citizen or God willing in elected office. So right now we're just trying to get through the holidays and like I said, kind of assess whatever opportunities may come up after.
What else is on your table? Running for your seat again, or becoming a United States Senator, or becoming governor?
That's a lot there, isn't it? No, look, I'm looking forward to. I was practicing law before this, and so I'll go back to that for the time being. And again, like I said, find other areas in which I can continue to serve and lead and advocate on behalf of the issues I've been fighting for. And just what you said, those are some opportunities. If I chose to run in 2022, would be those would be opportunities to do that. And so I think I'll take the next several months and like I said, get resettled into Charleston and see what, like I said, see how best I can be utilized and how best I can serve the people of South Carolina.
What particular bill describes your obviously time in Congress?
Well, we've got had a lot that passed at the House with bipartisan support, and we talked about some of them earlier. Our bipartisan bill that banned offshore drilling, that was one that I spearheaded, that I introduced. That was something we're very proud of. Not because because it was something that we ran on and we were fulfilling a campaign promise, but because it was bipartisan and it got attention on both sides of the aisle. The Great American Outdoors Act was another one. That legislation permanently funded the Land Water Conservation Fund. The LWCF is responsible for Waterfront Park, Pitt Street Bridge, just like every single county in South Carolina has a project that's been funded by that. And so kind of upkeeping and maintaining these green spaces for my son Boone, the future generations that are going to follow, is a big victory, not only just for us, but for those generations to follow.
And one last question, Congressman. What would you tell the average citizen right now in the 1st Congressional District? What's your message to them right now?
Well, I don't think we can lose hope on this democracy, on this. I think this experiment is too great to lose hope over everything that's going on right now with this pandemic. I know that folks are just tired of the partisanship, the fighting, and I would tell them that that there are a lot of successes in between these spats, and in between, we talked about some of them,
right,
how bipartisanship can win and bring people together, and what I said in my farewell speech is that we can get through a lot of issues just by sitting down, listening to each other, maybe having a beer together, but not name calling or disparaging one another, but honestly and truthfully trying to work with each other and trying to reach across the aisle. I think that's the future of this country. That's whether or not our political system is going to be a representation of who we truly are is going to depend upon people laying down their partisan swords, extending an olive branch and working with one another.
United States Congressman Joe Cunningham, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah.